Welcome back. I've got Peter Bissonnette on the line. Peter, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks very much. It's wonderful to be on your show.
It's really, really good to have you on the show. I've been, obviously an observer and a fan for a long time in the work that you've done. So, for those that aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was the president of Shaw Communications, and subsequently, I was also on the board of Shaw. And during the transition from Rogers to when Rogers merged with Shaw, but I've written a book called "Count on Me," and it really captures, my beginnings as a young child in boarding school, all the way through to from the Air Force and the monastery, and essentially how I came to be the way I was, the way my leadership evolved as the president of Shaw Communications, and it's captured in a project that's taken this 3 years to write. Next week it's launching, and so essentially some of the simple values that really kind of modeled me, if you will, in terms of the way I dealt with people and the relationships that we formed and the big challenges that we faced in sort of a collaborative kind of environment.
No, it's an incredible journey, and as I said in the pre-show, I'm really looking forward to diving into the book because I'm one of those things, and you mentioned it too, and I don't know if people picked up on it or not, but it's that journey that creates the type of leaders that we are. Yes, you can go and you can go, buy books and learn, from different leaders throughout history and pick up some tools and techniques that they did, but leadership comes within. It's who you are. It's, what you value and your experiences. And, just, a moment ago, you mentioned all those stories, monastery, Air Force, leading Shaw, uh, all, you could look at it on paper and go, wow, those are some pretty diverse things. But my hunch is along the way from, your very early years all the way up to the time that you stepped away was all these little experiences that you just put in the toolbox and you use interchangeably. And I know, I'm guessing anyway, I shouldn't assume this, but uh, it's one of those things where you have all these experiences and tools and you just use them. You don't think about, okay, I'm going to use the technique that I picked up in monastery, or I'm going to use an Air Force technique that I picked up during my time serving. So I just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you're so correct. I actually was somewhat mindful also of what did I want to be? I mean, how did I want to, lead our company? And I have a passion for music. I have a passion for photography. So there's a creative side to me, but there's also a very passionate business side to me as well. And so I spent 4 years in a monastery. And so if you look at that, that was sort of foundational for me in terms of, I don't know if I call it the good shepherd, but when I was managing and leading people, I felt a responsibility to provide a work environment for them that made them feel secure, motivated, that we shared the same vision. And so that to me, I kind of wrap up into my good shepherd days. And then in the Air Force, of course, it was all about discipline, but also technological learning. I think learning has been a big part of my life. I mean, whether I'm learning guitar, whether I'm learning photography, whether I'm learning technologies, whether I'm learning languages, so all of those absolutely become a part of you, but not consciously the thing. I think I can pull a hammer out right now. I think when I went to Lou Tice's sessions in Seattle, it was the chameleon in leadership. So you are what you are, and those are the experiences that have kind of formed you. And they can work in all sorts of different environments, whether you're in a boardroom in New York trying to negotiate a deal to buy Can West, or you're on you're across the table from a union negotiating a fair agreement, the way that you treat the people that you're negotiating with in terms of not adversaries, but people that accomplish, basically, if you can share the same kind of vision, maybe from different perspectives. So there is a toolbox that has been, which are experiences that create me, and the way that I lead is really a reflection of that.
Yeah, it shines through. And, I think about, the Shaw situation and going back to, when cable television first came out, it was, I remember when we finally got cable TV at home for the first time and everything, and it was like, it was just eye-opening. We went from a handful of channels to a whole bunch of channels and seeing all kinds of different content, and then you factor in from there, all of a sudden the internet boom kicks in, and then all of a sudden it's okay. We're just not in, the cable television business. Now we're in providing internet access, or, there's players that, dabble in, cell phone technology and all of that, where, all of a sudden you're going from this type of thing to this. And, a lot of those things happened and was evolving, while you were, helping build Shaw into, what it is today. And it, I'm guessing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. That's some big shifts for a company because, if you're let's say we'll pick on a bakery, for example. So you're a bakery, you make different things, and okay, well, we're gonna, everybody wants this type of fancy coffee, so we're gonna add some coffee to the mix. And all of a sudden, oh, we want sandwiches. Okay, well, let's make sandwiches. All of a sudden, your company's doing a lot different things than what it was originally built to do. And in order to do that and make those shifts, one, you got to have the right people at the table, but also, two, you have to, share that vision because when you're doing different things that, are different from what your core business was, that takes some effort to get buy-in because I know, a lot of organizations are very reluctant at first, like, do we want to get into that segment? What does that mean for us? So I'd love to hear, that
Yeah.
part of the journey for you.
Well, Michael, my life flashes before your eyes because what you described is really what I've experienced. And when we, as you said, in the early '80s, we had 12 channels, and that's all was available for us. We had a network that we had built, but all this is a story of kind of evolution of investing in your plant. When the opportunity to add more channels occurred, that was clearly a driver to expanding our networks. And then in 1995, when the internet, even talking about the internet, was kind of exciting, but it was unknown to many of us. It was unknown in terms of a service that we were offering. But again, investing in our cable plant, having people that would come into our company who had the expertise, if you will, to build hubs and digital head ends and all the kinds of things that we needed to do. And then the social side of it, we were in 3 million homes offering services. That has a tremendous responsibility for us to ensure that the cable system, the fiber optic networks that we had built could actually scale with the subscriber demand that was being put on those. In fact, during COVID, when most people were at home, that put a tremendous amount of, first of all, it tested our network, and we built a network that we thought was really robust. So technological change and all of the having the right people around you has been a huge contributor, if you will, to our ability to provide those services. And then, of course, cellular, and that the cost is such. Those are we talk about commitment. Our board every year would approve 800 to 900 million dollars of investment in our plant to build more plants, et cetera, et cetera. So that was driving our customer focus. How can we be the firstest with the mostest? And one of the things that was really unique about our company is our call centers were all in Canada. In Winnipeg, we had a call center. In Vancouver, we had a call center. When we were in Toronto, I know the telephone companies at the time, they were over in the Philippines, et cetera. But we really believed in being local, having people that actually enjoyed your service also as employees. So it was kind of a shared vision, but also a shared experience.
I love that you did that. Yeah, and it was just, again, it's giving that local connection to it. So people, when they're, having a customer support issue and they call in, there's, somebody on the other end of the line that is, like you said, using the services, familiar with it, may know some tips and tools and techniques that may not necessarily be in the, support manual yet, but it will be added because they're like, oh yeah, I discovered this. So they kind of invest in their own work, which is a beautiful thing. And you mentioned something, that I didn't even think about until right now. The COVID situation when everybody was sent home. And, there were people that were, you know, yeah, they may have used their computer at home a little bit and all of that, but all of a sudden that's a full-time job, and the demands shifted, dramatically, because you've got your business internet and you've got your home internet, and those networks are typically segmented in different ways and all of that, and sometimes they may be completely separated and not connected. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, we've got all of our business customers that are doing this. Well, guess what? Their offices are closed. Okay, yeah, they're connecting to some servers and whatnot, but the actual day-to-day in-office stuff is, that traffic has dropped dramatically, and all of a sudden, home base is going through the roof. And for me, and I know a lot of people, I don't recall. Maybe I, wasn't paying attention to it, but I don't recall hearing many stories about any of the providers that were having mass outages or things like that because of the spike in demand. So it's kudos to the entire industry to, not that we had much warning. I mean, yes, in your disaster recovery and risk management planning and things like that, it's like, okay, what happens if we get, a big spike in usage and things like that? Okay, that's fine. Well, yeah, you can plan for that, but you didn't plan for, all of humanity be home and using their internet and all of that. So I commend, everybody, including you and your team, for, making it as seamless of a situation as possible on a very, very challenging period of time for so many of us.
Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about J.R. Shaw, our founder. During COVID, Zoran, who was our IT specialist, we didn't just go from people at home, but working from home became a challenge. And working home is still now a reality that didn't exist then. And so there are still many, many people. And of course, they're working from home and they're working on our institutional network, which is wonderful. But it took people with vision, people with skill. One of the unique things, I used to call it the secret sauce of Shaw, was the way that we advocated for each other. And that's something I've certainly described in my book, is that we were a team, a leadership team. We shone the light on the Shaws. We weren't looking for the light to shine on us. We used to laugh about, oh, there's other companies where the people have these bumps on their heads for running to the light. We so we had a unique leadership team, and we had inspired employees. One of the things that I really has made it worthwhile to, in terms of writing this book with Lucy, was that employees have written me notes saying how much they really appreciated the sort of the leadership style that we had at Shaw, the way that we treated our employees. And again, very simple golden rule tenets. Things simple, it's simple to understand. Caring, like we talk about, caring really sort of underpins all of the other values. If you care, then you're going to be accountable. If you care, you'll be accountable to your colleague or to customers or to the board, shareholders, etc. So it was a wonderful kind of uh, it was a wonderful kind of environment to work in, to lead through, because there were so many people with all of their living their lives and building families through the relationship with Shaw. So it's something that I will carry to my death, is the gratitude that I have for the blessings of the relationships we had.
And it's shown through with, the customer service, the growth, the lack of a victim mentality, quite frankly, in your rank and file, where people just like, well, let's come together, let's figure this out. Okay, we can try this and this, because again, no one really had a warning that
Yeah,
okay, that we were all going to be mandated to vacate, public places and go home for a bit. And it, created new industries, created new dynamics, new challenges, new businesses. There was a ton of new businesses that were birthed out of it, because there was organizations that needed, some remote help, not just from an IT standpoint, but just remote based businesses that would help in a variety of different things. So, again, it uh, I think it would have been a lot bumpier for your organization if you didn't have the environment that you did. And I do a lot of work on, retention and burnout prevention and recovery and things
yes,
like that. And yeah, I doubt that I will ever have to work with people from Shaw, because they don't have that, because the caring component, they feel not only heard, but valued and appreciated. And I'm not just saying that as, you know, big words and things like that. No, there's a feeling when you go in, and it's of community, and you're like, I don't want to let my teammates down, so I'm going to hold myself accountable and help out and do things. And there's days where we don't feel our best, and your team knows you that well enough, they'll say, oh, you know what, I got this, go ahead, take care of this, we got you, we get this covered. And that's when work flows.
Yeah,
And that's when I love when I encounter people that have environments like that, because it restores my hope. Not that I'm, negative or anything like that, but it restores my hope when I see organizations that are struggling. I'm like, yeah, but look what's going on over here. And they're doing similar things. Might be a different industry, but they're doing similar things. They still have people, customer support, building infrastructure, doing whatever, and they're thriving and they don't have turnover and people love being there. And it's not like you're paying them each $1 million each, although knowing you like I do, you would if you could. But it's like they don't they're taken care of. And when they do that, quite frankly, it improves communities, outside of work. It's like, they're just, yeah, I had a, good day at work, or, it was a little challenging, but, we got through it and we fixed it. And, they're not, spending all Friday night and all weekend complaining about work. They're
yeah,
talking about something else. Maybe, they're talking about, what's going on with sports or a new movie coming out, or just, things out, that are, important in their lives. And when I see environments do that, and obviously your environments are like that, because again, going back to the toolbox that you've been accumulating over your career, you're using it, and it's simple. Help people be the best version of themselves. Create an environment where they can do that. When that happens, that's when you
yeah.
start seeing things. A lot of people describe it as magic. I call it, no, it's cause and effect. You go to the spice rack, you put in the right spices, the dish you're eating is going to be good. If it's not, well, then thankfully we have food delivery services now to fix that in about 20 minutes or so. Because otherwise, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to eat this. But so let's talk a little bit about your book. So it's coming out on the 18th of July, if I remember correctly, and it's, you said, and you already mentioned, it's taken you 3 years to kind of work on that, but obviously it's taking an entire career to be able to fill the pages of what you've experienced and all that. So I asked this question, and it's in a lot of ways, it's like, okay, who's your favorite kid if you have children? And it's like, I don't want to do that, but is there a part of the book that, after you finished, you went, wow, I'm really happy on how that turned out, or it might be the whole book. Curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's one of the driving forces was to create a legacy, and I mean, I'm 78 years old now, and we all have legacies, but I wanted to have a legacy that I was proud, first of all, of what we'd created. And I just wanted to ask, I'm sorry, just make one more point. When the leader and the founder of our company, JR, says, I want to put the smiles on the faces of my employees, we are a we company, not an I company, that really sets the tone for what we just described as well, in terms of how we come to a high, 90% engagement amongst employees. Those were unheard of numbers. And that didn't just happen, but it happened through a process. Um, Listening, active listening is very, very important. Observing and understanding when you talk about burnout. So um, look, caring enough that you would ask people how they're doing when you see some signs that maybe they're struggling. But anyway, so to get back to my book, I just wanted to make that point though, because it really, this was a whole leadership dynamic that created the kind of successes that we had at Shaw. In terms of the book itself, I often think of this as being a case study. There are many, many people that I've really been mentored by. And so in return, paying it back, I've really enjoyed the process of mentoring people. And I go on LinkedIn, I look at people that used to work at Shaw who have gone on to bigger and better things, and how proud that makes me feel. And the ongoing relationship that you continue to have by virtue of the time that we spent together. It's kind of like, that's the Stanley Cup and how people feel bonded from being part of the Stanley Cup. I think we have a bond that people who've worked for Shaw feel as well. And so capturing something that provides a historic kind of context for what went on, as you just described, as he went through the technological changes. This is a book that comes from simple, humble kind of beginnings, very simple kind of values, but living those values. And so the examples, as I say, I was in the Air Force, I was in a monastery, I've played in bands. The, you know, the opportunities that gives you to know your people. I mean, I played in bands with people that used to work at Shaw. So we've shared, they've seen a different side of me as well. What is it? And they go, wow, he's kind of just a normal guy. And that's what I am, just a regular person who really enjoys embracing people in their journey through life. And so in terms of making life better for others, this is kind of a way of capturing that legacy. And of course, Lucy Linsky, who co-wrote this with me, was a big part of us kind of creating this and putting it into words that really were meaningful. I mean, I had a beautiful letter from a person the other day saying he couldn't put the book down because he worked at Shaw, and he felt so wonderful to recount some of the moments that I talk about in the book, and that he actually had shared with us. And so those are the kinds of things that made the whole process worthwhile.
Yeah, I anticipate you're going to hear from a lot of people when the book is released, and it's going to be a reminder to them. And the big takeaway for me is for people, as simplistic as the statement is, it's so true. It's like, you know, live your life to the best that you can, and when you help others accomplish and do that as well, you change the world. And the ripple effect of your leadership for the countless people that you've worked with directly or indirectly, and now with this book, you're going to reach more and more people on it, because it's going to be, quite frankly, like you mentioned, a case study. It's like, how do you run an organization and use all of your different life experiences in a way to uh, be a greater good for your community, yourself, and everybody else. And now, if you can just get a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup every once in a while, that would be nice too. But that's a big ask, coming from a guy that's currently in Toronto. So,
Yeah,
but
I understand. I empathize
yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah. Well, as I tell people, I've worked and lived in five of the six original NHL cities. Montreal's the last one that I haven't done anything in yet. But I tell people, it's like, I'd love to see the Leafs finally punch it in, because kind of getting tired of looking at the last Stanley Cup picture being black and white. So
Yes,
we need. I mean, yes, we can colorize it, but nah, let's get something a little bit more current. So, Peter, I've loved this conversation, love the work that you've done and continue to do. Where can people find out more about you and all this stuff? And obviously, I'll have the link in the
yes.
book and everything else, but where can people find you?
I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I have quite an active group in LinkedIn. It's Peter.Bissonnette. If you just look up there, it'll take you to those different links. Thank you
Perfect.
so much, by the way. I really enjoyed meeting and chatting with you as well.
Likewise, Peter, this has been a gift to me, and I really appreciate your time today and sharing your wisdom and insight. It's going to make the difference in a whole lot of people's lives. So thanks again for being on the show, Peter.
Thanks, Michael. Bye bye.